if you want to accomplish a different result, you got to be different. You got to do things differently. Your mindset has to change completely, right? And that's true for real estate as well. There's so many of you that are having a hard time getting your first deal. And there's so many of you that are having a hard time getting past your second or third deal and breaking into the 10s and 20s and 30s and 50s and hundreds. And it's because you have to actually evolve as an investor, as a person, as a business owner, as a worker in a lot of different ways just to be able to break through these particular milestones, right? The person you have to be to get from 0 properties owned to 1, they're 2 completely different people. And to go from 2 or 3 properties to 50 properties, those are 2 completely different people. And you've got to embrace the fact that what you're doing now corresponds to the results that you're producing now in the state that you're in. The way you think, the way that you operate has to completely change. And before we get into how I had to change along the way to get through these milestones and get to where I'm at and then try to take this next step to our next set of goals, right? I'm gonna, 1, pour whiskey, 2, talk about the giveaway. So I actually only had 1 whiskey yesterday at Thanksgiving with my dad. It was that 28-year-old Lefroy that I spent too much money on just to see what too expensive whiskey tastes like, right? It was like $5.50 at Costco. I think the online price was like $800 everywhere else. And I poured it for him. That's all I had all day. I poured it for him and cheersed him, and he had a sip. My dad, every time my dad opens his mouth, he fucks the world, right? He basically just says whatever the hell he wants to say. He does not give a shit what anyone else feels about it. Cheers. 8 a.m. on freaking a Friday, and I'm the only person in the office here drinking a whiskey, going live with you guys. That's how much I love you. My dad had a sip just like that, and he went, tastes like whiskey. And that in my head, as if I wasn't already like so resolute that I would never buy a $500 bottle of whiskey again, that was the ultimate convincing, like just the closing line of I'm never going to spend more than $100, $120 on a bottle of whiskey. And most of the time, probably $60, right? So I used to get irritated by my dad's like one-off, but bullshit, like trash talk, right? Now I love it. I love it because he just doesn't give a shit. He just says what he wants to, right? Today's coupon code, and before I give you the code, I gotta do this every time. I have to give you guys a disclaimer before I give you the code every single time because people get buck wild watching this video over the weekend, trying to get some freebies after all the ones have already been claimed, right, over the course of like an hour. I'm gonna give you a coupon code here. It's not gonna be active until I announce it after the live. It's gonna be sometime shortly after 9 o'clock, after this live is over. I'm going to announce it through an Instagram story. I'm going to have a link to the store, and you're going to be able to go and select an item that you want to get for free and enter the code in the coupon code slot. If the coupon code slot is not present, that means all 100 freebies today, Black Friday, right? All 100 freebies have been redeemed already if that coupon code slot is gone. It means you're too late or you're too early. I haven't announced it yet, right? So don't try to go on the store and hit refresh before I announce it. The coupon code, and this is a word that I use very endearingly, and I'll tell you why after I tell you the code. The coupon code is HundySpot, HUNDYSPOT, one word, right? HundySpot. Let's see if I can show you there. Can you read it? Backwards? HundySpot. What's a HundySpot? What does that even mean? It's supposed to be encouraging today, right? I'm trying to get you guys to like think bigger. It's one of those think big lives. A HundySpot is when you make 100,000. It's what we call it, Mike and I, when we make 100,000 bucks on a wholesale deal. They happen often enough, more often than they used to, and it's pretty exciting when they happen, right? So yeah, HundySpot, that's the word. So we're gonna make a HundySpot on that deal. Now, usually when deals are a HundySpot, we keep them, right? Because we don't want to pay taxes on $100,000 of extra income. No, it's not Humpy Pot, it's HundySpot. One word. So yeah, a 100 spot, that's a life changer actually. Our first year in this business, before we had employees, right after we quit our jobs, we made a 60 pop, right? It's a pop until it gets to 100. Once it's 100, it's a spot. And once you get to $1 million, it's a stick. I've never done $1 million wholesale deal, right? $1 million profit wholesale deal. But we made a 60 pop once in December 2017. It was just the 2 of us, right? We had just quit our, we were making like 10K a month at our jobs, right? And then we started doing this business full time, and we were like working pretty hard, right? But still, December knocked down like 2 or 3 deals, and one of them was a 60 spot. And we were like, whoa, that's fucking nuts. That was life changing. So go get you a HundySpot, and you'll, I don't even want to read some of the comments that are in here. Honeypot's a nice one. Go get you a HundySpot, and it'll change your life. Look, guys, I've been stuck a million times. in this business and all along the way before it was even a business, right? It was just wanting to buy rental properties. I know a lot of you are in this stage, wanting to buy rental properties or wanting to buy a lot more rental properties and really make a business out of it, right? Those are the two kind of key milestones. And every time I get stuck, I've had to completely change my brain to get unstuck and do things that I wouldn't have agreed with before. If you had told me to do them before, I would have gone, no, that's not the right way to do this. It's not easy to tell yourself, hey, I have to break my mindset and then constantly shift it. You almost have to adopt that as a piece of your learning process, right? As this whole, okay, I'm gonna wire myself towards something, get to a certain point, and then unwire everything that I kind of like put all this hard work into learning and do things completely differently. And I mean, you guys know when I've been stuck. I told you these stories over the course of multiple lives. I mean, when I first bought my house and I was house hacking, I was stuck buying a rental property every 2.5 years with typical down payment money. That wasn't fast enough, right? And I was stuck making 25 bucks an hour not too long ago, and I had to do something completely different to get out of that phase. Last time I made 25 bucks an hour was 2016. So not that long ago. I've been stuck doing a bird deal once every 6 months. That wasn't where I wanted to be with this business. It had to go faster than that, right? And it took some pretty big changes to get out of doing just one little deal every 6 months. And dude, I've been stuck buying and selling. You guys are gonna hate me for saying this, right? Now we're stuck buying and selling sub $1 million properties. Very profitably. We're gonna do 100 deals this year. We're gonna make quite a bit of money, and like by my own measure, a lot of money. By a lot of people's measure, a lot of money, and maybe by some really rich people's measure, we're still kind of at that base level. We need to evolve, right, when it comes to like those big institutional real estate investors, and we're stuck. It's a great place to be stuck, but we still need to take that leap, right? And the leap is going to be something very different than what we do now. The way we operate and the way we think is going to have to change completely. So I need you guys to kind of embrace the fact that I'm going to tell you to do things a little bit differently and think of things a little bit differently than you do now. And I'm always doing this in my daily posts. I'm trying to prep you and condition you to kind of accept this shit I'm going to tell you in this live by saying outlandish, off the wall shit in my little 30-second, 60-second reels that a lot of you are not fans of, and maybe eventually you kind of get this acquired taste for me, right? But it kind of challenges you to think differently. We need to be challenged frequently to think differently to get to that next level. There's two big milestones that I'm going to talk about today, and I think these are two milestones where a lot of you guys are getting kind of caught up. And that first milestone is getting your first deal, right? That's one where everyone gets stuck in the learning phase or the getting money phase or just figuring out the business phase, right? And you just never get to that first deal, or you spend too long trying to get to that first deal, years getting to that first deal. I'm gonna actually drink my whiskey today. What do you think about that, since I'm going home after this? Man, I was not ready for that. I'm still on a food hangover from yesterday. The second big milestone is the Accelerator, right? I'm not a one-off, two-off, one deal at a time person anymore. I am now becoming a 50 deal person, right? I'm gonna get 50 done. I'm gonna get to that milestone where I own 50 doors. I'm gonna get to that milestone where I do 20, 30 deals in a year, right? I do deals consistently every week or every month, whatever it might be. That's a whole different person too, and takes getting to a different level. And I'm gonna talk about both these milestones, and each of them, incidentally, take a very particular frame of mind. Right? There's a theme to each of them. I'm going to share you that theme, and I'm going to do this in the context of like the lessons that I learned and how I kind of encountered these tips that I'm going to give you along the way, right? So I'm going to give you 5 tips for first deal and 5 tips to get to 50, and they all come straight out of my playbook, right? Things that I actually did to get my first deal and break out of that rut. Things I actually did to get to 50 fast and break out of that rut. I don't have a REIT. I should start one though. It's kind of next level for me. Look, the whole theme of getting the first deal, I think a lot of people don't do this, and a lot of people get to the first deal accidentally without doing this, is everything's treated like a business. Because we aren't treating it like a business when we're taking on that first little transaction. We're treating it like a hobby almost, right? Like a passive investment, like a savings account, and it's not a savings account. It may function as an operating account for your business, right? Your piece of property, but it's absolutely not just a savings account. It is a business, and the second you start treating it like that in a variety of ways, or learning about it, trying to develop it like one, then it gets really easy to get in front of that first deal. So 5 tips, and I'm gonna start really elementary. I'm just gonna walk you through the stuff that I did, and then get to almost the finish line, right? The first thing is tons of podcasts. I listened to tons of podcasts, and I didn't read fucking books. I read too many books too early on, and it didn't get me anywhere, right? I stopped reading books. One, because who the hell has time to read a ton of books all the time? It's much easier to listen to something, right? So I remember I was working in the lab for Bayer, and I was in this little kind of private room, oftentimes doing these research experiments, looking at data and all this stuff, and I didn't have to interact with people for many hours of my day, 4, 5, 6 hours a day, right? And then I had to drive to work. It was like a 50-minute commute in. I worked all the way out in Woodland, if anyone knows where that is, kind of past UC Davis, and I live in Sacramento. So it was this 50-minute commute, 8.5-hour work day, right? 50-minute commute back. And I had my phone on podcast 100% of the time. Like, I don't think I listened to music much for the 2 years before I bought my first rental property, or 1 year before I bought my first rental property, maybe. I was just casting, and I loved listening to people's stories. So I had this thing, my phone on the lab bench, and I had my headphones plugged in, and I'd be doing a full 8-hour day of work, and I'd probably spend like 4 or 5 hours listening to these podcasts. So I got through like every single Bigger Pockets podcast at the time, right? I was just indiscriminately selecting whatever information I can grab. Drive there, at work, drive back, walking the dog, oftentimes like at the gym. It was obscene. That wasn't very productive, right? Because I was more focused on the gym than I was on learning these podcasts. But I probably put in an average of like 6 hours a day on podcasts. The majority of them were listening to real investors' stories. This is one thing I want you guys to do. If you haven't done the first deal, or you're trying to get to deal 2 or 3 and you're still kind of learning your strategy, you want to listen to real investor stories. What do they do? You don't want to learn the philosophy of real estate investing. You want to get out of theory mode. Theory is easy to learn. Understanding what a cap rate is not that hard, right? Now, understanding how investors apply the use of cap rate to make decisions in their purchases, and then what their business strategy is and how that's kind of applied, that's extremely important to learn. So you just want to hear how people actually are buying property. And oftentimes when you're still chasing your first deal, yeah, listen to the people who are doing the big stuff, right? But you probably want to hear from a lot of people that are on deal number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're a couple steps ahead of you, right? So it's still applicable to what you're doing. It's not like this pipe dream too far of a reach for you to be able to execute on, right? But they're doing things better than what you are. You still have something to learn from them, right? It's just not so far out of reach. Lots and lots of hours of podcasts, just a ton. And I didn't just listen to real estate investors podcasts. I listened to a lot of sales podcasts. I listened to a lot of business podcasts. But a mandatory requirement, this kind of key checkbox for any podcast I listened to, it had to be case study on someone's actual business. What am I doing? I did not want to listen to people just bullshit and talk and teach theory on there. I wanted to hear stories. The second bit is you guys spend a lot of time with people in the space. So this is something I wouldn't recommend now, by the way. And I don't listen to podcasts now either, like at all. I mean, I probably should, but I'm doing things that are of a higher priority to my business's next level of evolution, right? So these 5 tips on first deal are probably not things you do as much chasing deal number 50, 100, 500, 1,000, whatever it is, right? But number 2 is talking to a ton of people in the business. I never do this anymore. I fucking hate RIA meetings. I hate RIA meetings. And I almost want to tell you not to go to them. But there was a time where I went to RIA meetings and it made me feel involved in the business. I got to hear a lot of people's real strategies, and I got to see a mixture of people all in one place at the same time talking about where they're at and what they're doing to get there, and watching other people learn and what they're picking up. And then maybe finding a couple people that, I don't want to say mentor, because a mentor implies like this very one-on-one long-term relationship. And that's kind of, I almost think that's a little silly, to be honest. You could have people that are mentors to certain topics for certain phases of your life, but like one long-term mentor is kind of unrealistic in many situations, and you have to get a little bit lucky to find that person, right? But you can find like micro mentors that, will have a couple cups of coffee with you and teach you a piece of the business, right? What's your sales process? How do you market for deals? How do you manage your properties? How do you operate your properties? How do you do construction on these things for your flips, right? How do you get these sold? You could find groups of people, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's on the internet, right? And I remember there was like a time, I can't even tell you why I did this, but I was just on like Bigger Pockets forums. I was going to every single like outreach group I could find, whether it was online or in person. And I found one guy in the forums that lived in like Reno. I was willing to message back and forth with me, and he bought a couple properties, and he seemed like he had a good head on his shoulders. And I don't know, we just got on a call. I was walking my dog at the park, and I was on the phone with this guy, and he was talking about how he was buying condos in Reno, and he had renovated one house, and he was flipping it, and he was looking for an out-of-state rental somewhere. I don't know if it was Kansas City or something like that. And I just spent like an hour talking to this dude. Things that are a complete waste of my time now, but I think all I needed was just to like immerse myself in the business and deal with people that are really in it. So talking to a ton of people that are really in it. And I know all you guys message me going, hey, can I get 15 minutes of your time? I want to just pick your brain. And my answers every time is no, right? I'm not just going to consult with you. I can't just give you 15 minutes for every single person that DMs me asking. But there's going to be a lot of people, I think, that maybe are more helpful to you than I am, as far as like peers in the business, that will spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour just chatting with you, meet you for coffee. I met with one guy that was doing flips in town, and he had a couple rentals by the college, and he was renting them by the room, and he told me about how he put up walls and created extra bedrooms and found the right properties that were like gonna be a good match for that strategy, right? And he's shown me some like $1.5 million spec build that his wife was the listing agent for, and he would take me to his flips and show me the work that he was doing, and it was really cool. I still talk to him every once in a while. That was the kind of person I need to be around. If you can get into someone's actual project and get them to show you, amazing. Now, I invest 100% out of state. A lot of people are out of state investors now, so maybe they can show you their project by means of numbers on paper. But getting in front of people to see what they're doing, let them show you what they're doing. You will learn the process that way. And it doesn't have to be, can I work for you? That's excessive. Just go spend an hour or two with a bunch of different people and let them show you their projects. You don't need to work for someone for months, right, or weeks to learn basic first deal strategy. The next bit, this is where we start to get a little bit more practical, guys. This is out of the learning phase. Trade expenses for seed money. A lot of people are afraid to spend to get into this business, right? They want to just buy the property and it be successful right off the bat, a good deal, but they're not willing to put money aside that they very well would spend out at the bar to send mailers out every month, to buy a software subscription for property research, whatever it might be. I think we'll talk about experimental spending in a second, but one thing that I did was when I was really getting into this and I was gonna start sending mail, I got an extra roommate in my house. I was house hacking, but I was down to one roommate. My girlfriend at the time was kind of done with like me renting out rooms, and I was cool with it. But when I started getting into this business, I wanted to be able to justify spending $500 a month on experimental expenses to develop this thing, whether it was buying people lunch or buying direct mail pieces or buying data or buying subscriptions or buying a virtual assistant, whatever it was. I wanted to feel very, very loose pocketed, very quick to spend money on stuff like this. So I got that roommate and I charged him $550 a month, and I spent that $550 a month, right? If you have to make a commitment to replace one expense or create some income to trade into this business, that way you don't feel like you're coming out of pocket just to try shit that's not getting you a result. Because at first it's not going to get you a result necessarily, right? You have to be okay with that. You have to be willing to commit to it whether there's a result or not. Creating some extra funds could help you do that. So the extra roommate, cutting that expensive hobby that you have, excessive little bit of luxury every month, whatever it is, sell the car with a payment, I don't know what it is. But create that extra couple $100 a month that you'd spend on learning and experimentation, or that extra $100 or a couple $100 or $1,000 a month that you would put aside in a savings account to buy the property. Now, I don't think trying to save more is going to get you anywhere fast enough. I think that's a great habit to have long term, not spending all your hard-earned cash. That'll allow you to be a better investor and invest in your business also. But I think what you need to do is find some operating expense that you can invest in, and then find a way to create the funds for it so it's easy for you to do that. I'm not hungover because I had one drink yesterday. I saw a comment. I usually don't read these comments while I'm actually speaking in a live. Just wait for the Q&A session. So, and the Q&A session is, by the way, going to be in like 15 minutes. Trade expenses for seed money. And then the next thing I did was I spent experimentally. And I told you guys what some of those things were, but I spent it very freely because I had some spare money dedicated to this, right? You're going to laugh, but I was going to get into it with some like local dude and send mailers here in Sacramento, I don't know, 6 years ago, 6.5 years, a long time ago, like before I even started this. I was just kind of playing around, and I bought a bunch of materials to actually send my own mailers, and spent some money on data, spent some money on like a bunch of like, paper and pads and special envelopes and all this other stuff, right? And then I bought, I don't know how many. It was like $400 or $500 worth of stamps. I found like stamps at a significant discount on eBay, like forever stamps, because you bought them in bulk, so you get, I don't know, 15, 20% off or something like that, right? And we still use those stamps. I spent $500 on stamps before I even like started this with Mike, right? Just to do some silly shit that was a horrible idea, sending your own mailers. And those stamps are still just kind of hanging out here in the office. We just stick them on an envelope every time a seller needs a contract for snail mail, right? So I was just willing to dump some cash onto experimental expenses. Don't be afraid to. It creates a sense of commitment to the business too. So you want to have those experimental spends on a regular basis. It gets you in the habit of spending money to build something. It's okay. Just burn it. It's not a big deal. And don't burn an amount of money that's going to put you in the dirt if you don't succeed. Spend an amount of money that you can afford to spend for no result. That's what I mean by experimental spending. And then the last step is get in front of deals daily. Get in front of deals daily. Like we hopped on a plane one time. I was waiting to get a new job. I left science. I was going into sales, and the second I got this job offer at this software company, I got on the phone with Mike, booked some plane tickets on like 5 days notice, booked a red eye to Chicago, which I don't recommend to you guys, right? It was the sweatiest, nastiest flight. Mike and I are both pretty big dudes. We're both like 6'1", like 220, right? And we were sitting right next to each other. And the AC wasn't working well. You guys have heard this story. It was an old American Airlines plane, but we got these tickets for like $90 round trip out of like San Francisco. So, we had like our girlfriends then drive us down and drop us off just so we could save money on this flight. Mike was taking like ice out of my we didn't sleep a minute, right, on this thing. It was the hottest freaking plane. And when we got there, we had some stuff to do like early in the morning. Mike was taking ice out of my water cup and like rubbing, he's bald, right? So he was rubbing it on his head to cool off. And on this flight, I told one of my best jokes ever, right? I still laugh about it when I think about it right now. I was like a big, like clean food junkie, right? And I'm still pretty healthy when it comes to it. But back then I really, really cared, right? I did not want to have cheat meals ever. It was just meat and veggies. And I had a bag of beef jerky and a big old thing of mixed nuts, like Costco size, right, in my backpack that I was eating on the plane. And we're all packed together, and I open up this bag of beef jerky, and I'm chowing on it, and it smells like beef jerky, right? It's just a stinky bag of beef jerky on a hot plane. And Mike was like, "Man, your meat stinks, dude. Like, put that stinky meat away." And there was a lady sitting next to me, like a middle-aged lady, just like sipping on her coffee or whatever it was. He's like, "Dude, put your fucking stinky meat away." I couldn't help myself. I said, if you think my meat stinks, wait till you smell my nuts." And I pulled him out right when I said that, and I died. And this lady like spit her fucking drink. She didn't say a word to me the whole flight before, right? She spit her shit out. We were just crying. It was the most memorable moment of that flight besides him stealing my ice. But we flew all the way out just to meet with realtors. They were willing to meet with us in person to try to pitch them on off-market deals. That's the extent we were willing to like go to just to get people to bring deals to us. And when we got back, we didn't buy a property when we were out there, right? I love that you guys fucking love that joke. When we got back, we had not purchased any property. We got to see some, which didn't really do anything for me, to be honest. But we started talking to these deal finders regularly, saying, send us deals. And if you get enough people sending you deals, if you're scouring the Facebook marketplace and the Craigslist for sale by owners, and fuck it, even the MLS when you're new, just so you could see stuff, right? And then call a ton of brokers. Call a ton of brokers and tell them what you're up to. Tell them you want off market and you're very serious about it. I'm not gonna be drinking all day, bro. And when you get enough deals sent to you, you will eventually capitalize on something, right? You're not gonna be in a position when you actually buy something if you don't get create a deal funnel. So you just got to talk to a lot of deal sources. And if that means you have to start mailing people, you can. I mean, you're not going to be good at it at first. You're not going to have your sales pitch down or your sales pro. You're not even going to know what you could buy or what you could pay for stuff. You're going to suck. You're not going to be like us, where we know, like, the seller gets on the phone and within like 3 minutes of talking, we know exactly what we could sell it for and exactly what we could buy it for. And we create a 30% spread. It's not that straightforward when you're new to the business. That's okay. So those are my 5 tips for getting that first deal, right? Tons of podcasts focused on case study, spend a ton of time with people in the space, learn how they operate their actual business, right? Trade expenses for seed money. Don't be afraid to spend on experiments regularly. In fact, commit to it and get in front of deals daily. And all of that fits that theme of this is a business. The second you start treating it like one, I realize this light's been probably too dim this whole time. The second you start treating it more like a business, you're gonna start getting like almost, it's gonna become difficult not to buy your first deal. How about that? There's gonna be so many opportunities in front of you that you're just gonna have to be straight chicken shit and not be able to pull the trigger on anything for it not to work. If you put yourself on the edge of the cliff every day and look down, eventually you're gonna be able to jump, right? But if you stand all the way over somewhere else, nowhere near the edge, you're not gonna jump. The next bit is, and I'll make this part a little bit faster because we've talked about growth and scalability many times over, but the next rut to get out of is getting from like deal 2, 3, 4, 5 to like deal 50. It's the hyper growth, right? It's getting this to become a real business, not just treating it like one to get into it, but really making it a business. And the theme here is you need money. Stage 1 is you need to think of it like a business. Stage 2 is you really need money. You need a lot of money, as much money as you can get. That's how you buy property. Property's expensive, right? So the first thing that you're gonna have to do is the first thing that we did as soon as we were on that flight back actually from Indiana, was you gotta have a business model, a viable business model. It can't just be I'm gonna spend my savings from my job, buy property number 1, I'm just gonna wait until I have property number 2, then property number 3, then property number 5. Now, if you have a high paying job or a dual income with high paying incomes or a business with a high, if you make a lot of money, then maybe you can take this approach if you don't wanna scale this and make it your primary focus. If you want this to just be passive, cool, you're good. But if you want to grow this thing actively as fast as possible, then you need to chase funds, you need to have a business model, and the business model needs to be 1, profitable. Yeah, I could talk, guys, sorry. I'm the only one here, right? I fucking better talk and fill in the hour. The business model has to be profitable, and the business model has to be scalable. So build a plan. My plan at first was, I'm gonna do a BRRRR deal, and then I'm gonna refinance it. I'm gonna find a bank that doesn't have a seasoning period, refinance it immediately, and then go find another one, and go find another one. And then we're gonna do 3, 4 deals a year. And then we're gonna do 8 deals the second year. We'll do 2 simultaneously at some point. Then we'll do 12, 15, 20, whatever it was, right? And then when that model broke down because it wasn't as scalable as we thought it was, all right, let's just sell these things. Let's just sell them. That's it, take our spread and keep moving as fast as possible. Make as much money as possible, and then we'll buy real estate with it, and we'll decide what to do from there. So you need to have a business model in place. Number 2 is you gotta get involved in the business. What do I mean by that? It means don't just buy a rental and just wait to buy another rental. Don't be afraid to go chase deals down. Maybe take on a wholesale opportunity. You see a good deal and you're like, I can't buy this, it's not for me, but I can make 15, 20, 30 or more, right? It's kind of hard to make more on wholesale deals when you don't have a wholesale business and you haven't like developed that infrastructure. It's easy for us to make 30 on a deal, but if you're just kind of like coming across stuff, and maybe you'll make 10 on it. Whatever, pitch it to a buddy, another investor you know, because you've been in the business, you've been interacting with people in the space, right? You know who buys in that market, whatever it might be. We took on flips early on that like were a ton of work and now a giant waste of our time, but made a lot of money on some of these. I think we made on one flip almost $80,000. Like it was very, very early in our career. We bought it like 2 months after we quit our jobs, and it took almost 10 months to get it sold, finally rehab it and get it sold. It was quite the process. We weren't very good at it. We weren't good at managing contractors. It was 100% remote. We didn't actually oversee it in person, but we did make 70, 75 grand on this flip. We did 2 or 3 more flips actually that we made pretty good money on, between like 30 and 40,000 bucks, just to try it out and get into the business, right? We mailed a bunch at first with no intention of being a wholesaling company, but just to get more deals for ourselves at more of a discount. And what did that turn into, right? Getting into the business, trying different deal types allows you to figure out what you want to focus on. And if you don't try these things out, you're not going to find the opportunity for tip number 3, and that's equity. If you want to scale actively in real estate, you have to chase equity, because equity is your margin of profit. That's it. Remember, the business model has to be profitable and then scalable. It has to be profitable to be scalable, right? But scalable refers to like operational constraints. It has to be profitable. So how do you get a profitable deal? How do you walk into a profitable deal quickly? You got to walk into a property, and it could be, I prefer a cash flowing property, but for my business, it needs to have equity in it, right? It needs to have an instant margin of profit. So we got to be able to find a deal that's worth 200, but we're getting it for 150, 140, 130, 90, out of the really lucky ones, right? I just picked up a 9 unit for 215. I'm not going to tell you what it's worth. A lot more than 215, right? A lot more than 215. And it's not like a one-off lucky thing at some point too. We just picked up a 3 unit for 75, and we'll put a new roof on for 8 grand, and then turn these units as these tenants cycle for 5 grand a pop, and maybe one day we'll 1031 out of it. You know, we could sell it now if it was all cleaned up for like 220. Right? So you got to chase equity. If you want to get your hands dirty, if you want to get your hands dirty, you want to be active and you want to grow fast. If you want to get to 50, remember, these tips are not for people that want to get from deal 4 to deal 5. This is for people that want to get from deal 5 to deal 50, quick, fast, in a freaking hurry. Have a great weekend. You got to chase equity. Find deals at a discount from market value, add value, raise rents, get the fuck out, create some spread. You need to make money. The next bit is don't be afraid to trade. So many people get hung up on, I have to hold everything forever. That's such horseshit. Don't be afraid to trade an old deal for a new deal. If that old deal made you a bunch of money, let's say you bought it for 50 and it's worth 100. I'm just going to use really magical hypothetical figures, right? Even if you didn't have to force the equity, you buy a property for 50, it's actually worth 100. It was a steal. Now it's cash flowing nicely for you. You got all that equity. You got a little bit of a tax write-off. The loan's getting paid down. Cool. And someone comes to you with another deal for 100 and it's worth 200. You don't have 100. And you don't have investors lined up, or maybe you don't want to split with them. I mean, what's wrong with 1031ing out of that first one, getting your 100, buy another $100,000 deal that's worth 2. That old deal is still alive as a piece of that new deal that's worth double the value. All right, so don't be afraid to trade, guys. Our very first rental property out of state, all in for like 52. We bought it for like 25, put 27 in, rehabbed it real nice. And we held it for like a year. And it was cash flowing pretty nicely, even though we never bothered getting a loan on it. And then eventually this business needed funds to buy a lot more good deals and grow. And we said, fuck this thing, dude. I mean, what are we gonna do with this $500 net cash flow a month after all expenses, or 600, whatever it was, 7 even, because there were no maintenance fees, right? We don't need $700 a month, but we could sure use $75,000 back in our pocket. So we sold it. And what do you think $75,000 did for our business? It gave us a major opportunity fund to buy a lot more deals back in a time where we needed cash, right? So don't be afraid to trade one property for something else. Don't be afraid to trade a small good deal and take your margin on it for another good deal. That's called reinvesting in your business, folks. It's pretty straightforward. It's not they make it seem like a critical flaw here if you sell a rental property ever in these like passive income communities. Well, fuck the passive income communities is what I have to say. I want some active money, and I want a lot of it. I don't want a couple bucks a year until it eventually gets to enough for me to barely live off, right? I'm trying to grow something big. If you want to get to 50, it's called Sprint to 50 in my book for a reason, right? If you want to get to 50 fast from 3 or 4, stop even thinking like the passive income folks think, or the FIRE folks. You're not trying to retire, you're trying to grow, right? The last bit is investor money is the tip. You need investors' money at some point in some format. And for us, the investor money came first in the form of buyers, right? We needed a lot more buyers to buy our product. Good buyers pay more. Good buyers want high quality product, and they want to pay a premium for high quality. They don't want the cheap stuff that makes us a little bit of money that's going to be a headache for them, but it's cheap. They want a good service level attached to it. They want things that we can create value around and makes us a lot more money. And many more of these buyers means we could sell many more products, and we could sell them at a competitive price point at its true value. because we could vet elite and not go for the people that want the super discount, right? They actually are willing to pay market price for the right service in a market where it's hard to get a quality product at market price. Anyways, they're just not available with a good service attached to it. And also, here's a little metaphor, right? Let's say you got a little restaurant, you got a sandwich shop, right? And you got 10 people coming in a day. It's not very busy. You're probably only selling sandwiches. Maybe eventually you'll sell some beer too. But if that motherfucker's got a line out the door, right? Or it's too busy to get seating, it's packed, then what are you gonna do? You're gonna start selling drinks, right? And someone's gonna buy it. The first couple people only came in for sandwiches and beer, but eventually someone's gonna be like, you know what? Let me get a cocktail while I wait, right? Eventually they're gonna be like, you know what? I'll eat a steak, right? You put some more expensive stuff on the menu. Demand allows you to sell more products. A high level of demand opens up your product line a lot. And that's done it for us too. Social media has taken us from getting like 5 new buyers a week to 60, 70 new buyers a day. And then we have to scale that down and say, you know what, we're gonna put a price cap, 150K minimum to invest with us, and 150K liquidity minimum, right? But you have to plan to invest 100 of it, or have the intention to invest 100 of it. That took our opt-ins from 70 to like 20 a day, but 20 people that have 100K they intend to invest per day makes us go, oh shit, we've got to fill these orders. Let's go out and get more product, because investors are not going to wait. They would rather go buy a quality 6 cap in a slightly more expensive market, or a 7 cap in a slightly more expensive market, than not buy anything, right? Then just sit on our list and watch a few investors get 8 caps in other markets. So it allows you to open things up. You need investor money, whether it's selling stuff to them, whether it's taking their money and buying stuff together. And of course, this comes after chasing equity, right? Investors they'll give you their money if you've got some equity in exchange, especially if you're partnering with them. So you need some investor money to make the deals happen. Those are my 5 tips to get to 50. And there's many more. But to get to 50, you need a business model. You need, let me pull this up, to get involved in the business. You need to chase equity, you need to not be afraid to trade, and you need to have investors around you that will either fund the deals or pay for the deals that you have to flip to them or sell to them, whatever it might be. And it comes down to that second kind of phase. Phase 1 was treat it like a business, get to your first deal. Phase 2 is real estate's expensive, and you need to chase capital and good deals in volume, right? And volume could mean a really high priced one single deal. It could mean a lot of low priced smaller deals, but a lot of them, 100 of them a year, right? It takes a lot of capital to really scale in real estate. It's not a cheap product. So you've got to be able to chase that money somehow. What's next? I mean, I'll tell you real quickly the rut that we're in. The rut is we're growing this business and it's very profitable with sub $1 million properties. Hell, very often sub $500,000 properties, most of our properties. And we're acquiring a lot of sub $500,000 properties at deep discounts, but we can't scale as real estate investors with this cheap product. Banks are difficult. It's hard to take down a deal that's big enough to like put a dent in. And these deals are so small that we don't want to bring investors in, and we don't want to own 1,000 doors of fourplexes. So our rut is we eventually have to break into taking down much bigger product. We got to transform this thing into a hedge fund. How do we do that? Man, I'll give you guys another live with some lessons I learned on how to evolve our mindset as business owners. But the first thing we're thinking is we have to get away from instant cash flow, and we have to really, really get a mindset of value, and we have to probably become better operators and not just good deal hunters. That's probably our next evolution. It takes a completely different brain to get from one stage to the next, guys. That's what I'm trying to get into your head today is it's okay to leave behind the principles that you learned before and the people that taught them to you too, to move on to the next thing. Maybe one day you'll just stop listening to my lives altogether too. I really hope for it. Pass me up as fast as you can. That's our topic for today, guys. So get to that first deal if you haven't. And if you're trying to get to deal number 50, use some of those principles to accelerate things if you want to get more active in this business. I would love to see you just speed this up. Hit me with some questions. I'm gonna have a drink and a breath of air. Because as someone said here, I could talk, but it's exhausting. It's actually like, my watch usually like logs a workout when I'm doing these lives, right? I get a little sweaty. There's a lot of like mental processing that goes into keeping this conversation going. soliloquy style, right? If you like that word, for an hour long. All right. Chattanooga, Tennessee, hipstery market. Flips? Sure. Yeah, trendy market. You just got to find a deal under market value. The key to finding a good deal under market value. The flip is really two things, right? It's being able to execute on the actual improvement really well, which I don't really love doing. I prefer to just find the deal at a discount. I don't like the improvement side of things, but in some markets I do. I've got a good team. The other part's finding a good deal at a discount. And there's kind of an art to finding a good deal. I mean, part of it comes down to like marketing and messaging and all that. But the other part of it comes to selecting the right market and the right product. You want to chase a product where there is demand to sell it, but to purchase it, you have a higher chance of getting lucky on price. And I'm not going to go into the art form of that. There's quite like a bunch of thought that goes into that. We have a lot of strategy revolving around engineering the value gap in these properties. So it's not just luck when we get a good deal at a discount. But I'm never going to tell you that shit. Never going to tell you that shit. There's some things that even my transparent ass will not share with you on these lives. And yeah, that's a high value consulting ticket that I probably would not take $10,000 an hour for. So would you suggest a flip before a rental? This is a good question for your first property. Would you suggest a flip or a rental? Look, they're two different things, two completely different things. A rental is much lower on the operational burden scale. It's less active. It's more passive, right? I hate the word passive now for some reason, but it's more passive. A flip is going to be really active, higher risk of you failing, right? If you succeed, you're going to make more money, and it's going to take more work to succeed. So you decide, what do you want to do? Do you want to hustle up, figure out a business, be hands-on, have a higher risk of failure, but with success, have the chance of making a lot more money? Or do you want to just put some money into something and just let it sit, operate at a low level, and just keep doing whatever you're doing in the first place that got you that money? Up to you. Flipping is not easy, right? It's got to be a business. You got to be committed. What do you got, guys? Hit me with some more questions. Would you ever cash out refi to invest? Not my primary home. Some people would. I get it. If you have $100,000 of debt on your primary home, it's worth $500, and you want to take a little bit of it out to responsibly go and invest, cool. But like, you have to think, where's the scale? You're just trading one form of debt for another, right? Like, all you're doing is moving equity. And yeah, maybe it's a smart place to move your equity if you could really afford the debt. And that's a big factor too, is when you acquire new debt, can you afford that additional debt? First of all, can you qualify for it, right? Can you qualify for the refi and then qualify to put that $100K as a down payment towards a $500,000 property or $400,000 property and still support all that debt in the bank size? And then the second bit is, do you have enough liquidity to support that debt? Because supporting debt really comes down to two things, right? Income and liquidity. Do you have extra cash to cover that payment for some period of time if for some reason your income isn't strong? And is your income currently strong enough so that you don't have to worry about using that extra cash? If you are refinancing your house to buy a first deal, I'm guessing you do not have enough liquidity to buy that deal without refinancing the house, which means you have to really ask yourself if you have enough liquidity to support that debt. You tell me. And it's going to run dry, right? That equity in your house is not going to go infinitely. So is that just a learning experiment? Is that what you consider a tuition payment to get you to figure out how properties work so you could find a more profitable and scalable way to do this without having to tap into your home equity infinitely? Because obviously there's not an infinite amount, right? So what are you going to do after that first deal with that home equity line of credit or that cash out refi? Think about it a little bit more. Does it grow? Can you sustain it? Or is it just going to get you one deal? Because one deal is not going to change your life. One deal doesn't change anyone's life, guys. It doesn't change anyone's life. I mean, that may sound like tone deaf of me, which is like this new phrase I can't stand, but it might sound tone deaf of me to say one deal is not going to change your life because I got all these deals now, right? But one deal, the only way one deal changed my life, it wasn't the money from it. It was getting into or developing the ability to do 100 more deals was the most important thing about the first deal. Do you use bank financing for every deal? No, I don't. It is harder to get bank financing infinitely than you think on these properties. There's a lot that goes into it. We have a very high income, a higher income than any W-2 person I've ever met. And we still, because we're business owners, because we're real estate investors, because these banks don't want you to buy really fast and a lot. right? They want you to develop some experience. They want to watch the performance of your assets. And when you get to certain dollar limits with these banks, they start underwriting you differently. At $1 million, at 2.5 million, at 5, at 10, many banks put you through a completely different underwriting process, right? So even with our deeply discounted deals, banks turn us down. We've got enough liquidity to cover our mortgages for decades. We got enough liquidity to pay off the whole mortgage at once on our whole debt portfolio right now. We have enough income to cover the debt, and our personal debt is like non-existent. You know, Mike rents a pretty cheap place, and I have a $1,200 monthly mortgage. We don't have car payments, student loans, credit cards, business debt, none of it. And the income and the liquidity and a bunch of paid off real estate cash, and banks still turn us down, right? So do I buy everything with financing? In a perfect world, yes, but honestly, I don't think it would be responsible. I think if I could easily do it, I would finance it right around 55% LTV, 50% LTV, just to be responsible. Which would really be 80% of our purchase prices, because we get these things at discounts anyways. But what we end up doing most of the time is we end up buying properties in cash, most of the time, and especially cheaper properties. We get really lucky deals on 1, 2, 3, 4 units. You know, that 9 unit we just got for $215, we bought it cash. We're not buying it with financing. We tried to approach a bank, and they're like, yeah, just slow down. You just got 2 loans from us. We'll come back to us in a couple months. We're like, fine, whatever. I'm not gonna fucking hassle with it. Here, $215 cash, whatever. The property's worth a lot more. I'll refi later. Or just 1031 out of it and find another bank somewhere else that'll refi me into a much bigger project or something like that. But it's a snag in the strategy, right? And I think the way we get around that strategy is chasing after a much bigger product where we can get agency debt. It's a lot more consistent. On this cheap stuff, we literally consider it trading tokens. Like, we buy these little cheap houses. We got a 10-pack of houses, kept 5 of them, $30K each. Actually, the profits from wholesaling the first 5 paid for the second 5. So we got these 5 houses for free. They're worth like 75, 80, 85 each, something like that, right? Renting for about $1,000 each a month on average. And we're not going to keep these long term. We're never going to get financing on them, right? So we're going to eventually sell these as trading tokens, 1031 these 5 houses, sell them for $80K a pop, $400,000. Use that $400,000 as a down payment towards a property for, you know, we're working a deal right now that's worth, like, seller's asking 1.9. We'll probably use it as a down payment towards that 1.9. That $1.9 million property is probably worth like 3 or something like that, you know, all improved. So sometimes financing dictates what you do with the deal. The inability to get it means you end up having to plan to sell this deal at some point, because you're never going to be able to get nice 80% LTV, 70% LTV loan. In a toppy market, guys, you don't want to be over leveraged. You don't want to have an 80% LTV portfolio in this market unless you have a lot of liquidity to support it, because banks aren't going to like you so much if the market does turn, and that's when you're going to want to buy so badly anyways, right? If the market's like bottom. Even think about like what the market was for investments in the heart of COVID, right? In 2020, talk about like, think June, right? May, June, things were starting to like open back up a little bit, but it was really difficult. We got some really, really good deals then. Banks were very tight. They did all kinds of stuff with their underwriting to make it more difficult for you to borrow, and properties were worth less. So if you bought your properties at a higher value and then the market dips a bit, 20%, but you find some more, when the market dips 20% overall or 15% overall for like investments, then there are going to be the likelihood of finding a 50% off deal goes up a ton, right? A lot of people go, oh, it's only 15%. Why would I wait for that? That's not why you wait for it. You wait for it because the amount of variability in pricing increases a lot too. So your chances of getting a really lucky deal at half off or more, that skyrockets, especially if you're in the game. Even if the market only dipped 15%. We got a 5-plex for 85 grand, put 50 into it, and it's renting for 4,200 a month back then. We got a duplex for 32,000 bucks. 1031 out of it for 140 after 7 grand to rehab 1 year later, right? We got some crazy deals, even though real estate didn't get hit that hard during COVID. And guess what? Banks didn't want to lend. So we just bought cash. And the banks that did want to lend wanted us to be really strong, put a lot of deposits down with them. And they looked at our portfolio, and a big part of their decision was, how much debt does this borrower already have? So keep your debt low. What you got, guys? I'm really going off on like individual. I'm trying to pick questions that require deeper answers and give you these like more educational responses instead of like these short answers. Am I going to post this to YouTube? Absolutely. I'll do it tomorrow morning. How did I get started? House hacking, which I don't really recommend, to be honest, because it wasn't really getting started. It just helped me live for free and helped me think more about real estate. And then I did an out-of-state BRRRR, sold it, used the money to start a wholesaling company. It's the shortest way I can tell my story. What are your thoughts on new development flips? You just got to be able to build and get out and trust that the market's not going to be softer at the time of your sale than you expect it to be. That's it. What's my total debt? On my personal home, I owe 150, well, maybe a little bit less by now. It's worth, I don't know, 550, 600, something like that, 500. On my business, on real estate, we owe 880 on our portfolio. It's a lot less than what our portfolio is worth. It's not even half. If you want to really be strong for a bank, I see a question, you got $1 million liquid. If you want to be really strong for a bank, and especially if you're self-employed, especially if you want them to consistently lend to you on these deals that they have no idea whether you'll operate them well or not, you gotta have $1 million liquid. Yeah, you gotta have $1 million liquid. And that can mean stocks in a brokerage account, right? I'm not a big stock guy, but I'm gonna say something some of you might not like, but in the eyes of the bank, and in today's day and age, having $1 million is not a crazy thing, right? You're not gonna knock anyone on their ass with your $1 million across your cash and brokerage account when you go to the bank. They're gonna be like, oh, this person's strong. That's what they're gonna say about you. They're not gonna go, whoa, holy shit. Now, if you make $1 million a year, they're gonna be like, oh, wow, this person's really strong, right? But having $1 million in the bank is not gonna make any bank do a backflip for you. It's crazy as that sounds, right? But it's not. It'll just make them feel like, okay, you're pretty safe. Yeah, 100%. $1 million is, shitty as it is to say, it's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money. You're not filthy if you've got $1 million in the bank. You're just doing pretty good, right? And you're doing pretty good if you have 200,000 in the bank too. Don't get me wrong, but it's not. You're not like a fucking world breaker, right? By any means. Hit me with some more questions, guys. I got a couple more minutes. When's a good time to buy a home or a duplex? I don't know. When you can afford it. When it's a good value. It's really not about time, but conditions. Now, good value is relative to the market. In a really high market, I need a bit of a discount, right? I need a pretty strong discount. In a really low market, I don't need much of a discount. Like if you're talking 2013 times, buying at market value, yeah, that worked back then. Nowadays, a discount for market value works unless you're in a market where properties are relatively undervalued compared to the rest. If you live in a place where you feel like the duplexes haven't popped off and aren't selling at rip-off prices compared to what the market can support, here they're a rip-off in Sacramento because you've got all these people with Sacramento wages here that are trying to buy houses at kind of like almost SoCal prices now because all the Bay Area people are moving up and pushing the prices up because they can afford a lot more. They have a lot of cash from the equity of the sale of their home, stock options from their jobs, right? These tech companies love to pay stock options, and these stocks soared over the last couple of years. And these high incomes, $250,000, $300,000 incomes, they come to Sacramento, they go to like Folsom, El Dorado Hills, if you guys are familiar, and they buy a house for $1 million, nice 5 and 3, 3,500 square foot, something like that, with a nice yard, with a good school district, and then the locals out here can't really pay for that, right? Because they make $70,000, $80,000 a year, $60,000 a year, 100 if they're high paid, whatever it might be. So this is not a good market to buy a house or duplex in right now if value matters to you. Now, if you could afford it, well, fuck it. Like, who am I to tell you, right? Buy your Ferrari. That's like saying, when's a good time to buy an exotic car? Never. But if you enjoy it and you can afford it, whatever, go for it. But in some markets, there are still good deals out there. And I think that's what I would go for if I were you really wanting to get in the game. That's why I don't invest here. I invest in markets that inherently, they're not just cheap. They seem like a good value compared to what's around them. Comparable products are more expensive than them. Advice on finding good areas to invest. Rent growth, landlord-friendly laws, enough cash flow, enough, 7 cap and above, right? On quality product. Something that you can keep occupied for more than 1 year at a time and not have to spend a ton of money on maintenance on. Thoughts on Akron, Ohio? I don't like working class product in Ohio, period. The laws and the rental demand don't really satisfy me much. And I've heard real estate investors and property managers out there kind of warn about small multifamily and affordable housing in those kind of markets. So yeah, I'm not a big fan. What kinds of business plan templates do banks want to see? You know, I've never had a bank ask for my business plan written out in like a model format, a spreadsheet, a flow chart, nothing like that, right? They want to know how our business operates. Just tell us about you. What do you do? How do you do it? Then they want to see our tax returns. right? And our personal financial statement, our global real estate schedule, which breaks down every property that you own and how much debt you have on it, its net operating income and all that stuff, right? But that's it. They don't want to see a written business plan in some over formalized format. They just want to understand what you do, how you do it, and they want to know how you think about money. I made a story on this the other day, and people seem to like it quite a bit. I've had so many calls with bankers where the banker goes, yeah, that borrower you sent me, back then was great, but dude, he's got a brand new 7 Series and his wife has a brand new Mercedes. And I don't know, they make a lot of money, but it kind of looks reckless. So I don't know if the underwriting is going to love that. So let's keep their loan limit low to start, right? They won't say no to that if the numbers are obviously working, but they look at someone like that and they go, we don't love these behaviors. We don't love these behaviors at all. And then I get to go to a bank and show them our financials, our financials are very strong, right? Liquidity, income, the amount of debt we have is very low relative to the amount of assets that we own, or relative to our total net worths, right? Like our debt to net worth ratio is very, very low. But on top of that, I get to say, we don't have car payments. We don't live in big homes. Look at my cheap mortgage here. Look how much my house is worth, by the way. And then look at my tax returns. Look how much I made over the last couple of years. And look at my house at market value, it's worth $550. I can buy it cash over and over and over. And they love to see that. They love to see that you're not in a hurry to go out and buy the $2, $3, $4 million house just because you just got a couple bucks and you're chasing investments and you're not in a hurry to put a bunch of debt on all the property that you own. You bought a bunch of it cash and you're not even asking for loans on it, right? They love to see these behaviors of like financial prudence, conservatism. It makes them feel like your financial health and your ability to repay them is your number one priority and not your ability to pay yourself and in the form of lifestyle. So being smart with your bank and the story that you could tell them is extremely important. Credit cards to finance a first deal? No way, dude. Go get some money. Go get some money, find a way, but not your credit card. Top 3 locations I like currently. I used to like particular markets and now I like whole regions wherever I could find a good deal. Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Wisconsin, North Carolina, all 5 of those states. Stay outside of the biggest cities in those states, and you'll have a good shot of finding a pretty good deal. A couple more questions, maybe one more, guys. Let's find one more question. That's not one I want to make the last question. What do we got, folks? Give me one more. Free education for y'all. That's because I love you guys. On a Friday morning where our office is closed, right? Like, our office is really closed. Not for me, though. I'm always doing something. Give me a good one. First property in Jackson, Mississippi. I don't hate the market. I don't love the market. I don't see the growth potential there. I don't see the undervaluation. If you have a mortgage on a house, can you still use it as collateral for a line of credit, AKA cash offers? You can only use your equity as collateral. That's your money, right? And when it's equity that already has a mortgage against it, then banks go, well, you know what? They have first position. So if for some reason you default somewhere, we can't take equity before they get their cut. So then they've got to consider if they're going to subordinate to somebody else's position or right to secure your equity. They want to see enough margin of safety. So they make sure there's room for them to get theirs, the first mortgage to get theirs, then them, the second mortgager, the subordinate, to get theirs as well. What that ends up meaning is I owe, let's say, okay, I'll use my house as an example. Let's say it's worth $500 and I owe $150 on it. They're not going to let me go get a second line all the way up to $500,000. They might say, you know what? We want you to stay at 80% LTV on the line that we're going to give you, 90% for a home equity line. For a business property, investment property, 65% LTV total. So if you already have 40% tapped out with one loan, they only have 25 more for you. And they want a 35% margin of safety so that everyone can get their money. They don't give a shit about you, by the way, right? They don't care if you get your money. They want to make sure every mortgager can get their money before them so that they can get their money. I answered a question on how to scale already. You guys, great questions today. And hopefully there was a good topic for you guys. You got to learn a couple things. I'm gonna get out of here, finish this whiskey, get your giveaway rolling pretty soon here. Post this up. It'll be on YouTube this weekend. Hope you had a great holiday, and I will see you on Monday.